What is going on, horror fam? I realize that it's been a while. I have actually been on hiatus. I am super psyched because recently I got a new job. I'm actually a full time manager at this cafe in Scottsdale, Arizona, and things have been going really, really well. But as you may notice on our channel, I've been taking a break from making videos. The last few videos, Kim has actually been talking about the Nightmare on Elm Street series, and those were really, really entertaining. I loved hearing what she had to say, but I figured, since it's been a while since I've done one of these Blu-ray update videos, that I would make one for you today. Now, there is a local used record store called Z Records. It's a place that I go to all the time. They have an amazing selection of horror films, and they recently opened back up, and I went there, and, of course, I did take some good safety measures. I wore a mask and everything, but they had some really good deals going on. So I picked up a few horror movies. Some of these I've been wanting to get for a long time. I'm really excited to talk about them today. My horror collection is growing more and more every month, and actually, I've been trying to put together a list of more titles that I want to get my hands on. There's actually some titles from the Criterion collection that I would love to purchase in the future. I would love to get Funny Games, the 1997 version. I would love to get the Japanese horror film House, or Hausu. That's been on my mind for a while, but these are the ones that I picked up recently, and I am extremely happy. So let's go ahead and get started. And before you judge me on this first one, I just got to say this. I am a completionist. I've been wanting to get my hands on every movie in the Conjuring universe for a while. I actually posted a picture of this Blu-ray on Reddit, and some people were like, why the hell would you want that? That's such a crappy subpar horror movie. But, like I said, I've been wanting to get all the films in the Conjuring universe. So, Annabelle. I heard really terrible things about this movie, and to be honest, I didn't really despise it. I mean, obviously, it was kind of made as a cheap cash grab. It was made as a cash grab sequel to a popular horror movie, and, I just have to say, what kind of parent in their right mind would allow this terrifying abomination in their child's bedroom? If I were a parent and my spouse wanted to put this thing in our child's bedroom, I would probably consider kicking it out the door because, what the hell? Overall, this is kind of a bland spin-off to the Conjuring universe. Nothing really stood out about it. Some of the plot rips off Rosemary's Baby just a little bit. Just the idea that this couple has been wanting to have a baby for a while, and they finally have one, but they, get possessed by this evil spirit, and it's honestly not a very good movie overall. And to be honest, I have never really been that terrified by the Annabelle doll. You could probably just pick the stupid thing up and punt it across the floor. There's nothing really threatening about a motionless doll that just sits and stares creepily and doesn't really do anything. I always thought she was a dumb horror antagonist. I don't find her threatening in the slightest. Okay, so this next movie, this is Audition, a Japanese horror film, and this Blu-ray was released by Arrow Video. They did a really, really tremendous job with this Blu-ray. Audition is a movie that kind of caught me off guard. I had read about it, and I had seen clips on television, but for the first half, actually, throughout most of the runtime, this is more of a romance, to be honest. At times, it's kind of more of a romantic comedy, but when you get to the last half hour or so, you see why it's such a notorious J horror film, because it turns out that the woman is actually really psychotic, and she is a freaky, freaky individual. Turns out that she is obsessed with the lead character in this movie, and not in a very healthy way. There's one particularly effective shot where she is sitting alone in her apartment complex. The room is kind of red, and the phone is ringing right next to her, and we see this bag, this bag in the middle of the floor, and we don't really know what's inside it, and then just out of nowhere, the bag starts moving, and it's a wonderful, wonderful moment. And of course, there's the infamous torture sequence with the piano wire, which still sends shivers down my spine, even when I think about it. It's not a particularly enjoyable ending, but it's an incredibly effective horror film. The Japanese are really skilled at making effective horror movies. There was another one, at least I think this was Japanese. It's called Dark Water. which was remade here in the U.S. with Jennifer Connelly, but that's another really good foreign horror film. And I do implore you to watch more foreign horror films because there are a good number of amazing foreign titles out there, and Audition is just one of them. All right, guys, so we got a double feature here. One of these movies is kind of crappy. The other one is just kind of average. So we got a double feature. Bram Stoker's Dracula, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, not Frankenstein, directed by the great Kenneth Branagh. Now, Dracula I admire more, mainly because of the production design and the practical effects. There is not a single ounce of CGI in this movie because Coppola was so insistent on using mostly practical effects. So he used old school like visual trickery, like he did some really impressive things with the camera. Keanu Reeves is awful in this movie. His English accent is notorious for being just god awful. It might be one of the worst movie accents in history, but this movie is reasonably faithful to the novel. I have actually read Dracula. It's one of my favorite horror novels of all time, and this movie does do a number of things right. Coppola did add his own artistic flourishes. Like, he did change the narrative a little bit in spots, but overall, this was a pretty faithful adaptation, Dracula. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I'm not familiar with the book. I haven't read it. This movie was just average. And I just have to say, Robert De Niro as the Frankenstein monster was a little distracting. It'd be like putting Tom Cruise in a horror movie, which I guess they did with The Mummy. But, I mean, just the fact that they got this A-list big celebrity to play the monster, it was, I don't know, it was a bit distracting. And his performance was fine, but it wasn't mind-blowing. It's nowhere near as groundbreaking as Boris Karloff's was in the 1931 version from Universal Studios. But from what I understand, this movie is also reasonably faithful to the source material. Like I said, I wouldn't know, but this double feature was about $7 used, so I just picked it up because, if nothing else, I can appreciate the technical aspects of both of these movies. And Kenneth Branagh. Kenneth Branagh is a man I've always admired, and I thought he did a decent job playing Frankenstein in this movie, and yeah, some of the costume design was pretty impressive. All right, guys. This one I am extremely proud of. I found a new copy of Candyman at Zia Records for only $14.99. That blew my mind because the last time I was there, I believe it was not on sale, but it was like $30. So I found it for half that price. I mean, it doesn't have the slip cover, but this is still an amazing Blu-ray. It's the collector's edition. It was released by Scream Factory, and Tony Todd, of course. I mean, he doesn't really get that much screen time, but he has a mesmerizing presence. Just his voice, his attitude, the design of the character is amazing. Arguably, Candyman has a little bit of a convoluted backstory. I don't want to go into too much detail, but Tony Todd is very eerie in this movie, and I love the commentary on racism in this movie. You know, there's some good commentary on, classism and all that good stuff. And I'm actually looking forward to the reboot, being produced by Jordan Peele, which should be coming out later this year. I don't know if they've postponed it, but I am looking forward to that as well. Last thing about Candyman, if you don't like bees or if you have a problem with bees, you may want to skip the ending of this movie because it's pretty gnarly. All right, this is a film that I just kind of bought on a whim. Stephen King's Children of the Corn, starring Sarah Connor, Linda Hamilton. Now, I actually grew up in Nebraska, and I remember as a child, my dad would drive us past rows and rows of cornfields, and I just remember being creeped out by them. Just something about cornfields. I don't know what it is, but they just kind of unnerved me. And Children of the Corn is a very cheesy 80s horror film. Honestly, the story by Stephen King isn't that much better. The biggest downside of this movie is its conclusion. I mean, when they finally reveal the monster, the he who walks behind the rose, I mean, it's just an incredibly bad 80s effect. It looks like something out of like an animated Disney film. It just looks ridiculous. This film would have been much, much more effective if He Who Hides Behind the Rose was more of a metaphor. But this ending makes the monster very literal, and I thought that was a very poor decision on the filmmaker's part. I don't remember if that's how it was in the original story. It's been a while since I've read it, but like I said, I bought this on a whim. It was, I think, like $8 or $9. It came in this nice steelbook packaging, so I guess I can't really complain. All right, so one of our earliest reviews, we reviewed the 2019 film Crawl, and I've already gone on and on about my intense fear of alligators and crocodiles. I don't really want to go into it much further, but this film did kind of make me piss my pants with fear because I do have a thing about alligators and crocodiles, and I got teased very heavily in the theater while watching this because I was just on the edge of my seat, and I thought I was going to scream at the top of my lungs like a little girl. And I just have to say it's a fine movie. I mean, it was well made, it was well acted. I mean, it doesn't have the most complex story in the world, but I do like how the hurricane in this movie is kind of at least from what I've read, it's kind of a metaphor for climate change, which is interesting. So there's a little bit of commentary there, but it's not heavy-handed. It was produced by the amazing Sam Raimi, which, by the way, Sam, Bubby, I really wish you'd get back into directing horror movies because I really missed you. And speaking of Sam Raimi movies, we have a Scream Factory edition of Drag Me to Hell. Now, I remember when this came out in 2009, people my age, I was like 15 or 16 at the time, they didn't really appreciate Drag Me to Hell because they didn't grow up with Sam Raimi's horror movies, his earlier horror movies like Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2. They just didn't really appreciate his style. Like, he has this kind of cartoonish style where he can make a serious horror movie, but he prefers to make he prefers horror comedies overall. Like there is a good number of slapstick humor in this movie. There's one scene where an anvil literally drops on a character's head, making her eyes just pop out of her sockets, and it's incredibly cartoonish. And I really dug this movie. I thought it was very well done. I actually sympathized with the main character, played by Alison Lohman. You know how she turns this old woman down for a loan because she's already had like 2 or 3 loans given to her at the bank, and it's a good story overall. And the ending, I mean, it's been more than 10 years since this movie's released, but needless to say, the ending does live up to the title. Okay, so there have been 10 movies released this year, but I just have to say that The Invisible Man, directed by Leigh Whannell, is my favorite movie of 2020 so far, which I know it's not really saying a lot. A lot of movies have been postponed. There really hasn't been that much out lately, but this was just an incredibly well-done movie. It's a movie that really refused to pander to its audience. Like, I can see in the hands of a lesser filmmaker this being very on the nose and heavy-handed with its commentary. But the beginning of this movie in particular relies mostly on visuals instead of exposition. In the opening scene, we see Elizabeth Moss's character. She's trying to sneak away from her boyfriend. She's in an abusive relationship, so she's trying to sneak away in the dead of night. And we learn everything we need to know within the first 5 minutes without any dialogue, really. And it's a very, very well done sequence. Elizabeth Moss is astounding in this movie. If you want to know my full thoughts, go visit our Invisible Man review, which we did record when this movie was first released. But it's just, I would go so far as to call it a contemporary classic, honestly. I just thought it was very well done. There were some very likable characters, and I know I've mentioned this before. I wasn't entirely sure what to think of the ending at first. I thought it went on a little bit too long, and I thought it contains what I thought at the time to be kind of an unnecessary twist. But the more I thought about it, the more I appreciated the ending. All right, guys, prepare to give me some more crap because I did pick up The Nun, another Conjuring spin-off movie. It actually, on the back here, it says, The Nun might be the scariest Conjuring yet. It was certainly scary in how boring it was. I almost fell asleep during this movie. I guess the biggest praise I can give this movie is as far as the visual style. I tried to emulate that classic Hammer look, like from the 50s, and the problem is that it just had a very bland feel about it. Nothing really about it stood out. I wasn't impressed with the nun at all. The actress who plays the nun, on the other hand, Bonnie Aarons, she is an incredibly nice person. She actually commented on one of our posts on Instagram, and I got to talk to her very briefly, and she was very nice, very sweet. She obviously loves her fans, but this was just another subpar Conjuring spinoff. I mean, there have been a couple of decent ones like Annabelle Creation and arguably Annabelle Comes Home, but The Nun, blah, BLAH. It just kind of, put me to sleep. Alright guys, so the last movie in this Blu-ray update video is the kick-ass World War II zombie film Overlord. Not the anime Overlord, the J.J. Abrams produced zombie movie Overlord. Now, what I appreciate about this movie is that it takes its subject matter seriously enough without going too far overboard. This could have been incredibly cartoonish and over the top, and I was waiting for it to get to that point, but it never really did. It treats the Nazis as disgusting criminals, which they were, and you do sympathize with the soldiers in this movie. I have a soft spot for World War II movies, and I thought this movie was very well done. I haven't really seen this director do much since this movie. I haven't looked at his filmography in a while, but I thought it was very well shot. It was really just a wild ride. I thought it was thrilling, and one of the better action horror movies to be released in the past 5 years, which, by the way, the action in this movie is also pretty grounded. It's not too insane or over the top, and I just thought it was a really good time. I mean, I watched this on Hulu for the first time, and afterwards I was just like, okay, I've got to pick this thing up on Blu-ray because I think it would look amazing in high definition, and I actually do want to watch it again soon because it was just a blast. It reminded me a little of Tarantino's Inglourious Bastards. It had kind of that tone, but yeah, it was just a fun time to be had. All right, boys and ghouls. So that is pretty much the end of my Blu-ray update video. Now, as far as what we're going to do next, we've been talking about it, and we do want to get the team back together again eventually, but we just want to see how things go. Of course, we want everyone to be safe. I mean, safety is our main priority. We're thinking of maybe doing a video here soon, as long as we just kind of, enforce some social distancing measures and, just stay safe. I think we might be fine, but we were thinking of doing the 2003 film Freddy vs. Jason, which would be a ton of fun to talk about. I mean, Freddy vs. Jason is one of my ultimate guilty pleasures. I have a lot of fun with that movie. But guys, I will certainly let you know. We will definitely keep you updated. Please follow us on our social media. And if you like this, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Round the Clock Frights. We will be bringing you more horrific content soon. And as always, have a very scary but safe day. And happy buying. And if you have any more suggestions as far as what I should buy or just anything at all, please let me know. And take care, guys. Have a good one.